how healthy you are is determined by how much stress you can safely handle.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where we feature top leaders on how they measure success in their business and life. Now, let's learn from their experiences.
Carl J. Cox here, host of the Measure Success podcast, where I talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. I'm so excited about our guest that we have here today, who's Dr. Amir Rashidian. He is absolutely amazing. He has 2 books, Cracking the Stress Secret, How to Turn Pressure into Power, which is an Amazon bestseller and #1 release in 2022, and also The Stress-Proof Life, The Secret to Health, Wealth, and Happiness. He's an author, speaker, chiropractor, entrepreneur, and he's passionate about teaching and equipping people to live a long and fulfilling life packed full of energy, strength, and vitality, and more importantly, the ability and mental clarity to build a happy memories and enjoyable life, right? This is the things when we, at the end of the day, right, we want to make sure that we have with this. So let's hit it at the beginning. Let's just crack right into this. From number 1, why is stress good?
That's a great question. Thank you, Carl. Stress is kind of, it's a force. Stress is like gravity. Gravity will keep your feet on the ground, or it can cause you to fall and get hurt. It's like fire. Fire can cook your food, or it can burn your hand. Stress is like money. Money can be used to fund terrorist activity, or it can put your kids through college. It's how you use it. And so stress is exactly the same way. It literally, by definition, is a force that causes change in your life. Now, the change can be a good thing or a bad thing. So if I'm not equipped to handle a stress in my life, I am susceptible to illness and injury. But if I am equipped to handle that stress, then I can use it to propel me towards success, like a fuel, like a source of energy and strength.
Okay, so much of the literature today is about not being stressed and to reduce stress and do yoga and do your breathing and do this, do that. You've got to relax. And one of the most frustrating things any patient can ever hear is be less stressed, right? That just literally increases your anxiety right there. So why are people saying that? Like, there has to be some wisdom behind that. What's the wisdom behind that? But then why can it be detrimental to be thinking that way?
Okay, 100%. First off, let's define the word health. Health is function. Health is how your body is functioning. It's not how you feel. It's exactly how everything in your body's working. Function means your immune system's functioning, your cardiovascular system's functioning, musculoskeletal function is functioning, your digestive system is functioning, and all those systems are functioning in cooperation with each other, monitored and controlled by the brain through the nervous system. So that's the definition of health, summarized in one word: function. Then you go, okay, and we said stress is a force, right? So that force can overwhelm you or it can help you. How healthy you are is determined by how much stress you can safely handle. Everyone has this thing called the general adaptation potential. Hans Selye defined the word stress or coined the word stress. And he said it's the non-specific response of the body to anything that acts on it. So he was looking at it internally, saying how your body responds to a situation is stress. But stress also works on you from the outside. So how healthy you are is determined by how much stress you can safely handle. So how do you know that? Well, we have this thing called the general adaptation potential. Imagine GAP, G-A-P, general adaptation potential. So let's say your gap is really wide. That means you can handle a lot of stress before you get sick. If the gap is narrow, a little bit of stress will make you sick. And so if your gap is narrow, then having stress in your life is detrimental to your health. If the gap is wide, then you can have a lot of stress in your life and not get injured and not get sick. And so your question is, why are people saying you should reduce stress? Well, they just assume we're weak. They just assume we don't have what it takes. You look at yourself right now, Carl. You are so successful. You are handling so many things. You've got plates spinning, more plates than you have fingers. And so how are you handling that? How are you managing all that? And you're smiling. So that means you're handling it very, very well. Now, someone else could come to you and say, I could never do all that. Well, that's true. They couldn't. And if you put your work schedule in that person's life, they'll be sick. They won't be able to handle it. And then both of us know people who are way above what we think we could handle. And so if we extrapolate that concept of how healthy you are is determined by how much stress you can safely handle, literally how successful you become in life is determined by how much stress you can safely handle. And how large your organization gets is also determined by how much stress you can safely handle. And then all the way down to how much money you make is also determined by how much stress you can safely handle. Anything you want in life that is good comes with stress. Let's say you want to get married. Let's say you're not married and you want to get married. Guess what? Marriage comes with stress. If you can't handle that stress, it's not going to be a great marriage. If you want to have kids, guess what? There's going to be more stress. You want to go higher in education and take a degree and a postdoctorate and whatever, more stress, right? You want to start a business? Please, there's stress. Start a wonderful podcast like yours? Stress. Everything comes with stress. You have to train to handle that stress, and you train by increasing that gap so that the stress in your life doesn't harm you.
Okay, so that's the big question here is, right? So how do you train your body and your mind to handle more stress?
Fantastic. You start with a little bit and you work your way up. So you have to determine, there's a saying that says you never know how far you can go until you risk going too far. And so that's where it is. So imagine you're at the gym weight training and you don't know how much you can bench press. So you just grab the bar and you do a few repetitions. You go, this is pretty easy, and you add a little bit of weight and a little bit of weight and a little bit of weight. And you get to a point where you can't lift the bar anymore. So then you back off a little bit and you train in the weight that you can do. Now you're adding repetitions. And when you get to a certain repetition, let's say now you can do 12 repetitions at a weight you could only do 6. Now let's add a little weight and see if we can do a few repetitions. And then you increase the repetitions. It's kind of the same way. You wouldn't take someone who doesn't have any experience and throw them in an organization with 100 employees. You want them to start at the bottom, work their way up. You don't take a six-year-old and put them in 8th grade and have them take a algebra test. A 6-year-old is spelling 3-letter words of cat, bat, and rat, and then little by little they grow up. So basically, that's how it is. You have to. In weight training, they call it progressive overload, but it's the same thing. It's a natural law, and you just little by little you grow into that. Now, physiologically speaking, you have to understand that your body and your physiology has to be equipped to handle that too. Stress, most people, when they think of stress, they think of the psycho-emotional aspect of it as, oh, I just had a fight with my spouse. I'm so stressed out. Or my boss just yelled at me. I'm so stressed out. Literally, stress comes in 3 dimensions, not 1. One is psycho-emotional, but the other is chemical. And the third one is physical. And you have to address all 3. So you have to train in all 3 dimensions as well.
Okay, I want to go back to those 3 points in just a moment. But logically, one of the things is our mind that holds us back from what we believe we can do. And it's literally just a mental barrier. I can remember the times being in high school and 225 pounds, 2 plates. That was the big thing for me. And then once again, back then I was probably 135 pounds. And so to lift 225 was like mentally, right? It was, can I put on the 2 plates? That was such a big deal. For the most common one everyone will know is the 4-minute mile. That was the sacred, nobody could beat it. They believed it was impossible, right? That the human body couldn't run 4 miles. But Roger Bannister, of course, proved it was wrong. I just literally read an article, came out on July 27th, 2024. Luke Hauser breaks record. Yes, this is University of Washington runners make Seattle Mile City. What's interesting is 15 runners in that one race alone did run a sub 4-minute mile. So we all have those barriers. We all have these pieces of where we don't think we can get past it. We create our own, I think many times our own ceilings. We blame sometimes other people. We blame our body. We blame the environment. But the reality, it's often our own selves believing that we're not worthy of getting to there. What do you do to help people get past that barrier so they can get to that point? And it's not just their mental body, which is literally holding back their physical body from doing more.
Yeah, you have to build on past victories. Number one, most of my patients always say, if I wasn't so stressed, I wouldn't be so sick. And it's just the stress that's causing me sick. And I think you have to understand the concept of it is that if stress is neutral, it's not good and it's not bad, it's just strictly neutral, then what makes it good or bad is us. And it's how we handle that stress. And if we can properly handle that stress. So I guess learning the concept. I've looked at successful people and studied them. There's 3 things they have in common. that the rest of the world doesn't have these things. Number one is that they have a definition of stress that's different than everybody else. Everybody else says stress is terrible. Their definition of stress is that it's going to come with anything I want. So if I'm going for greatness, I want to win a gold medal or climb Mount Everest and summit, or if I want to start a business, or if I want to take my business to the next level, the successful people know they're going to have to handle some stress. What does that look like, right? Because it's just a concept, right? You go, that means you're going to have some sleepless nights. That means you're going to have some family members that are going to feel neglected. That means you're going to have to juggle a few things. So you plan ahead and go, how am I going to handle all that? The second thing these successful people have in common is they have a relationship with that stress. So they kind of allow it into their life, and then they reduce it at times and increase it at times, and they know that it's going to come and go. And the last thing is they never try to reduce stress. That's never their goal. Their goal is always to get stronger and better. So Roger Bannister, you mentioned, there was a movie about that, right? Because he literally, to learn how to run faster than a 4-minute mile, he ran to the point where he passed out. So you have to go beyond your limit. I have some athletes I work with, and a lot of people want speed. Size and speed seem to be the most important things. And they go, well, how can I run faster? I go, well, you have to run faster than you can to get faster. And like, what does that mean? How do I run faster than I can? Well, I go, okay, well then, you got to run downhill, because gravity is going to pull you, and then it forces you. It's a little dangerous. I mean, I don't recommend your audience doing it. This is for elite athletes. Or what they do is they attach themselves to these bungee cords, and they'll pull back. They'll attach to the goalpost and pull back, and then they start running as fast as you can, and the bungee is pulling them, and it's forcing their legs and arms to move faster, and then they acclimate to that. So we have to go beyond our limits, but not too much past our limits. When you want to bench 2 plates, and right now you can only do 1 plate, you're not going to add a plate to each side. You're probably going to add 5 pounds to each side, and another 5 pounds, and incrementally grow. And that's the most important thing.
Once again, I just absolutely love this discussion, because the majority of my career has been with fast growing companies. And I remember you talk with somebody and they're like, oh, you don't want to do that. I'll give a specific example, though, of just something that's very simple. In my life, we have the Strategy for Saturday blog. For a long time, I was writing it on a Saturday morning in a coffee shop and literally releasing it that day. And I actually kind of liked it. And I liked the stress of it in a weird way, because it forced me to get out the door. It's like, I'm going to show up, get there by 7 a.m. at the coffee shop, get it done in a couple hours, ship it off. And it wasn't perfect, but it kind of felt authentic. It was real. Well, the problem was it was creating stress at home. The missus was like, hey, why are you gone every Saturday morning? I was like, why? My thinking was, oh, it's okay because you sleep a couple of hours anyways, and I'm just going to come home, bring you back a Starbucks. Everything's going to be fine. But the reality is it was creating stress. And it also created a little bit of stress for me. So we changed. Now I'm 4 weeks ahead of writing the blogs, right? We found a way where the stress is now literally a month ahead. What a great problem, right? This is now. And so in the worst case scenario, if I do miss something, I'm going to be fine. We can easily catch it back up because we're literally 3 to 4 weeks ahead. We've created this new stress, but it forced me. I had to get out of this habit, which wasn't actually necessarily the best stress, right? I thought it was fine, but it really wasn't, because it was creating stress at home. But now we found a way to change it, to get ahead of it. I do have some help that, we hired help to help out with the process as well. And that combination has been so much healthier. And that's where I think, once again, is like a lot of times people get stuck. They don't believe they can change their habits or their process or their systems. And so they cap themselves. And it's like, okay, we have to rethink the way we're doing it.
That's right. One of my mentors always said, when you're at the top of a mountain, but you want to go higher, you actually have to climb down before you can climb a higher mountain to go up higher. So I believe that's necessary. I believe you had to go through the difficulty to discover the new simplicity. Oliver Wendell Holmes said a quote, and I hope I don't butcher this. He said, I wouldn't give a fig for simplicity on this side of complexity, but I would give my life for simplicity on the far side of complexity. And I believe what he meant is that you can simplify your life by reducing all your expenses, not having a family, not having any responsibilities, rent a room in somebody's basement, $200 a month, eat ramen noodles, and you live a very simple life. You're not required, nothing's required of you. You're living a very simple life. That's simplicity on this side. So you look at Sir Walter Branson, who runs, I don't know how many companies, hundreds of thousands of employees, and he sits in his island sipping champagne, and he doesn't even have a cell phone. He has a landline, and he managed all of this on Necker Island. And you go, how does he get there? Well, he went through the complexity. So he started out simple. He dealt with the stress. He dealt with the difficulties. And every time he was met with a challenge, I recently met someone who who was on the island with him and was speaking to him. And one of the questions he asked him is, how many lawsuits have you had? He goes, you mean how many lawsuits am I in right now? He goes, well, yeah, how many lawsuits? He goes, you mean active lawsuits? He goes, okay, active lawsuits, 70. So there's 70 lawsuits that he's dealing with. And he's calm and he's relaxed. Now, you put one lawsuit on me, I will not be able to sip champagne and relax on an island. But that's him. So he's expanded his ability. The same with what you did. You figured out, hey, this is not sustainable and I need to change something. So we're going to create margin. We're going to get ahead of it. So there's no way you got 4 weeks ahead by not working hard. You had to do even more to get 4 weeks ahead. Then you got in a groove and then you start to coast. And now if you want to go to the next level, you're going to have to go through some complexity. So that's part of it, is enjoy simplicity, but we be willing to go through some complexity to create simplicity on the far side.
There's 3 different components that you mentioned beforehand that you have to work through to help get through stress. Which is the most challenging for, if you may, your patients or people that you're working with?
I think the most challenging is to get people to understand they have to work on all 3 simultaneously. I work out at a couple of different gyms. I just like the variety. So I have the one gym where it's all big time bodybuilders, and then I've got the other one that's a commercial gym, and I have some friends at each. So I like but anyways, in this one gym, there's a row of cardiovascular equipment, it's a couple rows, and there's TVs on the walls, and there are these women that sit on the exercise equipment, whether it's the elliptical or the exercise bike or treadmill, whatever it is, they're on there. And every time I go in, it's the same women on the same equipment, and they're pedaling or pushing, and they're sweating, and their bodies haven't changed. They've been there for 10 years. 10 years, every day I go there, and their bodies haven't changed. And you go, why? They exercise so hard, but they're not getting any results. And then there was this one guy, I just spoke to him. I had to go up and talk to him because he joined the gym about 9-10 months ago, and he has lost 60 pounds. And you can tell he looks amazing. I I think his name is John. I walked up and I shook his hand. I said, hey, what a great transformation. This is inspiring to the rest of us. And he thanked me for saying that. But literally, I'm thanking him because he's seeing change. And I go, these people have been going here for 10 years and no change. You come in here 9 months and you've got this amazing transformation, and it's because he's doing all 3 dimensions. So if you make a small change in the physical dimension, meaning let's say all you do is increase your activity by 5%. And then you say, okay, what about the chemical dimension? Okay, don't eat that Snickers bar you eat every afternoon. Cut back on 1 soda, whatever that might be. Or if you don't have any bad habits, you know something. When I speak to audiences, I go, okay, can you think of one thing that you could do today that you're currently not doing that would improve your health? Everyone says, yeah. So everybody knows one thing they could do, right? So in the chemical dimension, what's something you should be eating that you're not eating? What's one thing you're eating that you shouldn't be eating? And reduce the one and increase the other just by a little bit. And then in the emotional dimension may be the hardest one because it starts with belief. You have to believe you can. But confidence comes from victory. Marty Schottenheimer was hired as the head coach of the Washington Redskins. This is many years ago. It was 2001, and it was a press conference. And he's sitting in the press conference with the microphone, and there's the press out there, and they're all asking questions. And one of them says, do you think you're going to win? How are you going to increase the confidence of your team? Because your team has had multiple losing seasons, 10 years they've been losing. How are you going to increase that? And he said, let me ask you a question. What comes first, winning or confidence? And the reporter said, well, you have to have confidence to win. He said, yes, you do. But you can't have confidence if you don't win. And in fact, winning has to come first, then confidence. So that's why you have to build on your past victories. When you hit a roadblock, you go, I've been here before. Last time I hit a roadblock, it was like this. Guess what? I went through that. I can do this too. Now, when it comes to psycho-emotional dimension, let's say we were just talking about weight loss. Someone wants to lose a lot of weight and they're exercising, they're eating right, but they're still not losing weight. It's because they're one of those women on the exercise equipment. And guess what they're doing? As they're running on the treadmill, they're watching TV. So where's their mind? Their mind is somewhere disconnected completely from their body. Now, what do? If I get on a treadmill, which, I might a couple times a week, I run through my affirmations as I'm running. Literally, I have this thing. It takes me 20 minutes to say. I go through this. So it starts out with today's a great day. And I have the opportunity to be the best I can be. And I go through and I go through my goals. I have affirmations, multiple affirmations for each goal, everything I want to accomplish. And constantly I'm thinking, why am I running? Well, I'm running so I can be a better businessman, better doctor, better father, better husband. And I go through and I link it all to my goals. And I'm constantly, if you run next to me on a treadmill, you'll think I'm crazy because you'll hear me whispering. Why? Because I want my mind and body connected so that I know why I'm doing this. And as you visualize, so you become what your self-image of you is. You change that self-image through repetition, through what you speak, through what you visualize. You create an image. If you close your eyes right now, imagine you're in front of your bathroom mirror. If you see what you like in your imagination, you will become that. If you see only flaws and things you hate, you will stay where you are. So that may be the hardest part, is the psycho-emotional part. Now, most people watch the news at night before they go to sleep. That raises your cortisol levels. Cortisol needs to be low before you go to sleep. Cortisol is already high in the morning. That's what wakes you up before your alarm clock. If you're healthy, you wake up before your alarm clock and you're rested. Why? Because cortisol levels grew through the night. Watch the news in the morning. I'm not telling you not to watch the news. All the negatives, all the bad stuff, watch it in the morning because you already have high cortisol. You're probably drinking coffee too. You're stressing your adrenals, all that stuff. That's fine. Do it in the morning. Then at night, do something, enjoyable. Read something that feels good. Watch a Hallmark movie. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a waste of time, but if it makes you feel good, do something like that. So anyways, that's the emotional part. But if you improve a little bit in each of the dimensions, you will see big results. If you improve big time in one dimension and not improve the others, you will not see any results.
Yeah, I think that is such a powerful thing of having the whole. It's Dr. Mir. One of the things I've been doing recently is I've been doing these 40-day sprints, and I'll admit the first 40 days I failed on, and there's multiple different reasons behind it. But I did. But this is my third part. I'm halfway through, but I had to get through the hard part because what am I doing? I'm doing about 12 different new habits at once. So I'm not just in one new habit. I'm doing like 12 different habits at one time.
Very nice.
And so that's part of the reason why it was so hard. And one of them, this might not sound like a big deal to people, but I'm waking at 4:40 a.m. To me, before 5 was too early. I had a mental block with it. Why would I ever want to wake up at 4:40? But I'm waking up at 4:40, and then I go through and doing writing. But one of the things that you said was really interesting there is saying things out loud. I same thing. I have a series of things that I go through and different prayers and different things of that nature. And when you say some things out loud, it's amazing how it captivates you more and it almost activates the message versus just reading it, right? And even more powerful, like when you read and listen at the same time, right? Once again, you're getting two sets. And then if you write notes, you have just this ability to get more indwelt as opposed to just being a passive activity, right? Just like what you're talking about when people are on the exercise bike and they're actually watching the TV, just that same exact goal versus being indwelt. And, it's interesting. Once again, it took some time, but what's really cool is sure enough, it's been working. It's helped reduce the weight that I was trying to get off that I picked up too much when I was being too sedentary over the winter. There was some habits. I noticed some other things that being more active. Fascinating. It's been super fascinating. And it's like, I knew this. This is not magic, right? And I did basic things of not drinking alcohol and no caffeine. And man, I'm feeling so much better. And it's just to clarify, it's not like I drank a lot of it. But there was these habits I had set in place. And it's amazing when all of a sudden you go away for something. I'm really looking forward to the next 3 weeks to see how it continues to unfold. And by the way, there's like these things where I traditionally would have habits to go back to. Like I'm going to go to potentially 3 baseball games coming up soon. to place parks I've never been to. What would I do? Have a beer. It's like the thing, the traditional thing to do. And it's like, I'm not going to do it because I'm, in this 40-day sprint right now. But what's cool about it, right, is we can make amazing changes, by just, it comes down to changing habits, right? And you have to be ingrained. So one of the hardest things, right, is often we try to do things ourselves. How do you help people get like an accountability partner? That's usually ends up increasing traction so much. What type of things do you do, or do you recommend to your patients or people you're working with so they will stick to it and they will change their habits?
Yeah, good question. Every habit, I believe, has three parts to it, which is one is reminder. So let's say you normally don't exercise, but now you want to start doing exercise, and you go, well, let me do something simple. So you do a search on the internet, and there's this thing called the Zach Bush 4-minute workout. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah, literally, it's only 4 minutes. Dr. Zach Bush he's famous. He's a medical doctor, and actually, it works. It's a 4-minute routine, and you're supposed to do it 4 times a day. So it's 16 minutes throughout the day, and it increases nitric oxide in the body and promotes muscle building and all that stuff. Long term, it's not going to work, but for someone who's just starting out, it's fantastic. So you go, okay, I'm just going to do this 4-minute workout, and 4 minutes. That's easy. What you have to understand is what's easy to do, it's easy not to do also. So you'll wake up, you'll go, okay, let me do my 4-minute workout. I'll wait. I'll eat breakfast first. Let me have this. Let me check the news. Let me check my email. Next thing you know, it's lunchtime. You go, let me eat lunch first. Let me get back to work. Let me return some phone calls. Now it's evening time, and then you go to bed. So the 3 R's are, and I saw this in a book. I forget what the name of the book was. The 3 R's are reminder, ritual, reward. And so for you to make sure you do it, you have to schedule it and set a reminder. So if it's on your to-do list, it probably won't get done. But if it's in your calendar with an alert, like I knew this podcast was coming up. I had it scheduled in advance. When I looked at my calendar yesterday and today, I saw it. I knew it was here. I was ready for it. I wasn't going to miss it. And I got a reminder an hour before and 10 minutes before. Make sure you log in. And so that reminder has to be there. Schedule it. Make a reminder. Now, you scheduled it 4 minutes in your day, and someone says, hey, do you have time at noon? You say, no, I'm busy. I have an appointment with myself for 4 minutes. I can call you after that. It's in your calendar. That's the number one reminder. Ritual is if it's done the same way every day, that's when it becomes a habit. If you do it differently every day, it's never going to have a chance to become a habit because everybody's a creature of habit. For you to build a habit, you have to break another habit. That's just a fact because 90% of your thoughts are the thoughts you had yesterday. 90% of the things you do today are the same things you did yesterday. No wonder you get the same results every single day. So for you to change that, you have to break a habit to start a new habit. You do it in the form of a ritual. So I have a 17.5-minute routine where I do mobilization exercises for my spine. It's some of the things I recommend my patients, and I do it myself. I haven't missed a day in over 15 years. We'd be camping with my kids, and I will get up. We're in a tent. I get up, I go roll around on the grass doing my exercises because I don't want to ever miss a day because I've gone too long without missing a day. I'm not going to miss now. And it's become a habit. So it has to be a ritual. First thing I wake up is that, like a cat that stretches when they first wake up. And then the last one is a reward. Unless you reward behavior, it doesn't become a habit. And that reward is where you pick what you want it to be. That reward can be, hey, like I was talking to a lady patient of mine just today. This morning, and I said, why don't you put $1 in a jar every time you do your exercises? And when it adds up to $1,000, buy something you would never buy with $1,000. You would never spend $1,000 on a pair of shoes, right? She's like, oh, absolutely not. I go, why don't you go buy $1,000 pair of shoes? Buy $1,000 purse. Reward yourself. But every time you do your exercise, throw $1 in there. It's going to take you a little over 3 years. A little over 3 years if you do it every day to get $1,000. It's 1,000 days in a row. But now you have $1,000, and you wouldn't have had that $1,000 anyways. You're gonna go do something really cool, whatever you want. But don't spend it on bills or groceries. It's got to be something fun, and pick in advance what it's gonna be. Another patient of mine came in, successful businessman. He goes, Doc, I got a part-time job. What are you talking about? He goes, oh, yeah, I have a part-time job. I show up, I clock in, I clock out, and it doesn't pay much, but the benefits are great. And I go, what are you talking about? He owns this large manufacturing plant. He's very successful. He doesn't need what are you talking about? He said, okay, so here's what it is. Ever since I was a child, I never missed a day of work. If I have to be at work, I show up on time, I do what's expected of me, and I stay till it's done. Until I started to think of my exercises as a part-time job, I kept missing it. The minute I told myself, this is now my job, I show up on time, I get it done. And so he had to change his mentality. And the minute it became a job as opposed to something he does outside of his work, he didn't miss, and he hasn't missed a day, and he keeps doing it. So it depends on what rewards you and what you think. I tell my boys, my three sons, what are the three rules of success? Number one, outwork everybody. Number two, do something towards your goals every single day. Even if it's sit there for 60 seconds and visualize your goal, every day you think about your goal and you do one thing towards it. And the last one, believe. Believe in yourself, believe in your abilities, believe in your future, believe in who you want to become. And then I learned this one from Ed Milet, who says, your hero is you in 5 years. That's your hero. So who's that person? What does that person look like? What does he do? What does he say? How does he act? And then work on becoming that. So I think that's that mental part.
This has been fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to ask some of my questions I like to ask to our guests regularly. So from your own business and what you do and what you're trying to accomplish, and we barely talked about it, but we've been talking about more of the difference, right? Once again, of what you're doing and how they impact. I'm curious from a business perspective, or perhaps even the people around you, how are you measuring success in your business?
That's awesome. I think in business alone, success is you wake up, you look forward to going to work. Success is you look forward to seeing the people that you work with every day. Success is having more energy at the end of the day than you did halfway through the day. That I believe is success. Just like I define success in life as on my deathbed, my kids still like me. I think that's success. So general success in life is I measure it by that. If my kids still like, because there's so many people who have burned bridges and destroyed relationships and so on. But on more of a practical level, I look at my business as an upside down org chart. What that means is I'm at the bottom. And my job is to serve my direct reports, who ultimately serve their reports, and then ultimately serve the customers, who in this case is patients of our practices. And so if I do my job, our patients benefit. And who's at the very top is the patients. So we grow outward like a tree. The bottom is small, the top is wide. Now it has roots, and those roots are what I establish as systems, protocols, and procedures. And so that upside down org chart is the culture of reverse accountability. What that means is if I hired, Mary to come work in our practice, I am responsible for her success, not the other way around. Mary's not responsible for my success. I'm the one who hired her. So I want to meet with Mary and say, what do you consider success? What are your personal goals? What are your professional goals? Let's meet quarterly. Let's come up with plans. Let's help you achieve what you want to achieve. I am here for you. And it's that, the concept of servant leadership is the same thing. Upside down org chart, the owner's at the bottom, you work your way up.
I loved what you talked about. Two things. One, first of all, going back to your family, you already asked how you measure success in personal life, which is your kids are you still have a positive relationship with them at the end of your days. I think that's awesome. I hadn't quite heard that answer before. So thank you for providing something new there. Secondly, what you're describing is what's in Good to Great. Good to Great talks about the concept that they use the term level 5 leadership, which many people have heard, but really it's servant-based leadership. And once again, I know for those who already listened to the book or read the book from Jim Collins, the research, Jim Collins was trying his best to this not be about a leadership book, but all 11 of the companies all had level 5 leaders, every single one of them. And they found it was basically mathematically impossible to have people the same characteristics all leading the same company, which basically he had to put it in because they all had these company is more important than thyself at the end of the day, and what an awesome, tremendous, that's why once I go into why that book is so great, so many different ways. I sometimes say it's the Bible of business, so to speak, right? Because there's just so many wonderful truths, consistencies that are in there with data and research. And we're just like, wow, right? This is really powerful. But what you talked about there is not many people think about it that way. There's this common of I'm going to hire people and they work for me and I pay them and they're going to do my job. And you could actually get them to do some level of effectiveness because they call it level 4 leadership. But if you want extraordinary companies, you need to have level 5 leadership. And that's that servant base. So I love it how you described how you flip it upside down. It's your responsibility in the day to make people great. And they're going to feel that. That's the irony behind this. When they feel that, they're going to run through a wall for you.
Absolutely. I was sitting in a room, it's called the Vault Conference, and Tom Brady was speaking, and he was being interviewed for like 90 minutes, and they were talking about the culture of a team and how do you create a great culture because you've always been part of these winning teams. And he said, well, they have to love each other and they have to love the mission. And that's what does it. And he goes, his example was, if I'm watching film on a team we're going to play this weekend and a player gets a sack and the whole team runs over and they all celebrate together, I worry about whether we can beat that team. But if I see a team and a player gets a sack or scores a touchdown and he's the only one celebrating and the others don't join in, he goes, I know we can beat those people. And he said, I wouldn't ever allow someone like that on our team, because I would say the mission and the purpose has to be greater than your personal achievements or your desire to be great personally. If you put the team ahead, and he always made sure, and he also had culture protectors on the team, and he named some other football players that he's played with in the past. He goes, I couldn't do it all, so I had to select these people and say, this is our culture, protect it, make sure we maintain this, like each other, like the vision. Another great example is they asked Marines and Navy SEALs, and they said, what makes you so focused on what you do and so great that you're willing to take a bullet? Is it because you believe in the mission? They said, no, that's not it. They said, is it because you love your country? He said, that's not it. Well, what is it? He goes, because I know the guy standing next to me would take a bullet for me. And because I know he would do that, I will do it for him. And that's what it was. If we create a team of individuals who are willing to help each other, stick up for each other, protect each other. I tell my patients, I say, not my patients, but my staff, I'll say, and I say this when I'm hiring them, I say, most companies will say the customer's always right. We're not that. In this business, my team is always right because I picked you. I know you, I know who you are, and I know your intentions are in the right place. I will never throw you under the bus. I will stick up for you. If a patient or a customer, accuses you of something wrong, I'm not going to take their side. I'll investigate, obviously, but you're the one on my team. You're the one I work with every day. You're the one I'll stick up for. And they need to know that. They need to know I'm there for them and I've got their back.
That's awesome. Okay. A book that has inspired you, not one of your own books, of course, because I love what the two books you have, but what is a book that has inspired you that you want to share with our audience?
That's really good. There are so many books. There's one book I've read over and over, and I've listened to it, and it's called The Traveler's Gift. Have you ever heard of this book?
I have not read it myself or listened to it, but tell us more about that.
It's by Andy Andrews. And the story behind it is really good because apparently he wrote it and no publisher wanted to publish it. Now it's a multi-million copy bestseller. But it's about a guy who is down on his luck. He gets fired. He needs money to pay for an operation that his daughter needs, and he feels worthless and useless. And he gets in a car and he decides he's going to kill himself. And he crashes his car on purpose, and he wakes up back in time and he meets 7 people, 7 historical figures. And each person he meets in this journey as he travels through time teaches him one success principle. And at the end of it, he's in the hospital, his family's around him, and he remembers all these principles and he ends up being extremely successful. So that's the short of it. I'm not going to spoil anything else, but he meets people like Christopher Columbus, Solomon from the Bible, Abraham Lincoln, Chamberlain, who led the armies of the North at Gettysburg, at the Battle of Gettysburg, and Anne Frank, and the angel Gabriel. And he has these conversations with each one of them. It's phenomenal how he goes through these conversations, and it basically brings them up to life. I think someday it should be a movie, but I think that's been a very influential book in my life, and I've really enjoyed it. But then there's the regular ones like Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Wonderful books. Everybody should read those over and over regularly. The greatest book of all time is the Bible. I read the Bible every single year. I try to read a different translation all the way through so that I get the different perspective, and obviously that's been the most influential in my life.
That's awesome. Dr. Amir, how can people connect and learn more about you?
Well, certainly you can email me through our website, midatlanticclinic.com. My personal website is drrashidian.com. I think there's a way to contact me through that as well. Our YouTube channel is called Real Chiropractic, and we have a podcast that's on YouTube plus Spotify and everywhere else. The podcast is called Real Health with Brandy, and Amir. Brandy's my wife. And every week we read all the latest articles in the news about health and wellness. We will digest it for you and describe it and talk about the wellness perspective on that. So, podcast, YouTube, Facebook too. We have Mid-Atlantic Clinic is our Facebook, and we try to be pretty active on that.
Perfect. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest today on the Measure Success podcast.
My pleasure. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And to everyone else who's listening, I hope you have enjoyed this podcast. I love how he is challenging the standard concept that stress is bad. The reality is it's neutral, right? And how do we properly find ways to harness our potential the right way? And that's what I loved at what you've done today. When you talked about it, you did a great job explaining it. You have 2 books. Once again, I highly recommend that as we on our website and also, of course, on the podcast. So please take a look, make a recommendation. As I always say, hey, we get these wonderful guests because of your reviews. So if you've liked this podcast today and you want great guests like Dr. Amir, come on, please go out, do a podcast recommendation, do a review. That continues to help us grow. And with that, as we always like to say, wishing you the very best and measuring your success. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Measure Success podcast. We'll see you again next time to learn from the best. Remember to subscribe now to get future episodes.